Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Preston M. Smith. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm Preston M. Smith, at PMS Artwork everywhere on internet land and socials. I want to thank you for landing on this podcast. Whether you're a professional artist, just getting started in the art world, a collector of art, or just consider yourself a creative person, this podcast has something for you. I like to think of it as a fun way to rant and talk to other creative people about living the life of an artist, surviving and getting ahead in the art world, and enjoying your life. But most importantly, not waiting until you're dead to make it happen. All right, let's get started. Welcome back to the Living Artist Podcast, everybody. Well, if you have been anywhere around a television or a device or computer or hell, even radio, you probably know about the crazy apocalyptic wildfires here in the Los Angeles area. And we're just going to jump into it today because, not really feeling like doing a very big, funny intro.
Hey, wait a minute.
Oh.
I've got something to say here.
Okay, Mumford. Yeah, the floor is yours. What do you got?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what I got. You know what? I can't remember.
Okay, that's all right. Well, anytime you think of something, you can...
Oh, yeah, I got it. Well,
Okay.
So there's been something on my mind. You know what? Never mind.
Okay, you know what? Don't worry about it. If you think of anything, at any time, you can feel free to chime in and...
Chime me in. I'll chime you in, fella.
Okay. Well, anyway, open offer and just know it's there if you need it. And we'll get into the podcast. Before we start talking about the actual fires and that whole situation and then getting into how it can kind of affect your art, I wanted to, follow up on a promise I made on the last episode, which is if you leave a review, I will shout you out here at the beginning of the podcast and read the review. So here we go. This one comes from Margaret Thatcher Art. It starts out, "The real deal. I started listening to The Living Artist prior to meeting Preston and his lovely wife at Shockbox Gallery. Wonderful, genuine people. I love the encouragement and practical tips Preston gives, and I'm highly entertained by Mumford and the rest of the crew that happen to drop in or take over completely. Keep going, Preston. Much appreciated."
All right.
Yeah. You got something?
Yeah, well, normally I'd say something snarky about that, but she seemed pretty spot on about me. So, yeah, good on you.
Yeah. I figured you might like that part. Well, anyway, this is Margaret Thatcher Art. You can find her at margaretthatcherart.com or at Margaret Thatcher Art on Instagram. And I'm going to put a link in the show notes so you can quickly just click on that and go check out her art. Her name is actually Meg Thatcher. Well, she goes by Meg Thatcher. I did meet her at Shockbox and her husband, and they were wonderful people. And I really loved her piece that she had in Shockbox, and I just love her art in general. So definitely check out Margaret Thatcher Art or at Margaret Thatcher Art on Instagram. And while we're at it, I'm going to give a little shout out to somebody else. That is Katie Kirby. She has been reaching out and asking how my wife and I have been doing during these fires. And she sent a wonderful, lovely card of her painting and her art. And she's just very thoughtful. And I checked out her art more. And I just think it's really good. She's got a wonderful women's series, a wild women's series, and just some wonderful art in general. She travels around with her studio now around the country and gets inspiration. They're in Montana right now. And I just think it's a lovely, wonderful idea and very creative. So a shout out to Katie Kirby. You can check out her work at katykstudio.com or at katyk on Instagram. And that is Katy, Katyk studio.com and Instagram. So thank you to both of you. Thanks for the review. Thanks for sending the wonderful, beautiful painting postcard. And yeah, just shouting out some people that really deserve some attention with their art and for just being wonderful people. So that's how we're going to start off. And now moving into, yep, you guessed it.
Uh-oh.
That's right. We're talking about the fires because you know what? That's what's going on. And never in my life have I seen a situation like this, honestly. And I'm sure you've seen it on the news or seen some articles or postings on social media or whatever, these LA wildfires have just been insane and truly apocalyptic. I grew up in the mountains. I've seen wildfires. I've seen 25 years of fires in Los Angeles. I've never seen anything like this. The destruction that it has done to communities, to the mountains, the acreage it's burned, completely demolished homes and businesses in literally 15 minutes. Just crazy. The winds started up, Santa Ana winds. We got worse than usual Santa Ana winds this year, and they're still happening right now. So we're still on high alert, but we got a tiny bit of a break between Sunday and now because the winds died down a little bit, but they're popping up again today and going through Thursday. So we're still in a red flag event and could get more winds. And these winds, there were 90-mile-an-hour winds, were just sweeping through neighborhoods and just demolishing complete neighborhoods. It looks like an atom bomb went off in these. It's just, the destruction is unbelievable. And I'm sure you've seen some of the, the clips on it. It's just devastating for people. My heart and my wife's heart goes out to all the people who've been affected. We've been affected more in a secondhand way, but it has been terrifying and scary. We were almost evacuated. We were in a situation where the fires were coming back over from the Palisades, over the mountains into the valley, and it looked, no joke, like a volcano erupting. It was really ominous and scary, and it was coming down at us and then spreading over to the 405 as well, some other communities. But it was coming down, and they started evacuating very fast. My wife was coming up from work, and we thought we were okay at this point. And all of a sudden, it's like, evacuation warning. This went from voluntary to mandatory. This neighborhood went from voluntary to mandatory. Now this one's mandatory. Now this one's voluntary. And it just kept moving. And within an hour, that had changed like 3 different times. So we were like actually the next neighborhood to be evacuated. So we were frantically packing our bags, getting a bag ready to go just to be able to leave at a moment's notice. And we watched the news all night and fell asleep on the couch. And luckily we didn't have to get into that evacuation zone. But, I thought we'd be fine because we're, a little ways up from the hills, because normally it's the people who are right in the foothills or right up against the mountain who get, in danger. But because of these winds and because what we saw in Altadena and in the Palisades, and, we had fires around us. We had the West Hills, we had Sylmar, the Eaton fire. There was a point when we had 4 or 5 fires all around where we are. So we were getting smoke. We were, in the danger zone. And if those winds picked up like they did again and like they are now, we had no idea how far it was going to reach. And they were saying with these heightened winds that the embers that were being blown around were reaching up to 3 miles and starting fires. They were doing these spot fires. And that's what was happening with these neighborhoods. And we were easily well within this range. So we were, really scared for a bit. And I have my studio here. It is a really scary and ongoing situation. But thanks for everybody who's reached out and asked how we're doing. My heart goes out to everybody. We tried to drop off some food yesterday at a fire station. We actually got turned away because so many people had already dropped off food. And it's great to see everybody coming together and reaching out. It's been really hard on me, specifically with what the disease I'm fighting and my nervous system. It's just been like really spiked all of my problems more. But, we're getting through it. We are staying positive. We're staying vigilant, and we're trying to get through it the best we can. But it really hit home. And this is something that everybody can relate to here listening. It really hit home. Well, no pun intended. It hit home because it actually could have hit our home, but also because my studio and all my art, I've got 500 paintings still in my studio and in my home. And I was just freaked out that not only would we lose our home maybe, but we would lose all of my art that I haven't sold yet over the years that I've got work backing, past like 25 years still in my studio. And it's just so much part of my life. And it's such a freaky thing to have that suddenly be in danger. And we've talked a little bit about fires and protecting your work in the past, but I figured we'd go into it a tiny bit more in a little bit more detail today because it really is something that can hit you at a moment's notice. That's something that this week has proven to me. It's one thing to have just like a fire spark up that maybe you can get under control, but with the winds that we saw, it just can demolish your house and your studio, all of your artwork, all of your home. You can maybe lose your life. It can be gone in 15 minutes. I mean, it's no joke. So we're going to talk about that a little bit right now.
Oh, wait, I remember. Oh, it's got to get.
It happens to the best of us. So what happens when something like this goes on in your world, or, maybe it's something else, but let's just stay with the fire for now because that's what's happening. And it happens so fast. One thing that really struck me that, you always think, oh, okay, if there's a fire, I can get out there, I can use the fire extinguisher, I can get it under control, I can potentially get some stuff out. But the rapid pace of these fires and how quickly they were just on top of you, it really kind of freaked me out, to be honest. And I just realized how little I would be able to grab. Literally, some people were just grabbing nothing. They were in there. All of a sudden, there's flames engulfing their house, and they grab a picture, and they're gone. And that's it. They say, "Oh, grab the deed to your house. Grab, essential belongings. Grab this, grab that." Sometimes you don't have time to do that. So it's important to have a go bag ready. Obviously, that's what they say. We had an earthquake bag ready, but we had to pack some stuff up frantically, and we were able to get about 20 minutes of packing in there. And I realized, what? I cannot get my paintings. I can't get any of them. Although I do have some new work in my house, not in the studio, like a handful of new pieces that I just created that are, drying or were drying or I was taking pictures of, and I have them ready in my house. So I could probably grab 5 to 10 pieces and get them in the car at the last minute. So I think that's something that, we can take. At least you'd have something new you've worked on as like almost like a touchstone or something for your whole studio, but also just something you can kind of take and run with if you had to rebuild. So I think it's important to have some pieces set aside that you can grab easily. That's the first point. If you have like a trailer or something like that where you can store some work and have it be protected, so it's not volatile to the elements or whatever, and you can just take that, hook it up and go. That's another great strategy. Maybe your whole studio is not going to be mobile, obviously, but you can have a handful of select pieces that you have set aside for that can just go in an instant if you need to. That's a good idea if you have that ability. I know a lot of us don't have that ability. I don't really right now. I haven't, but I have all my stuff in the studio or in the house, but I luckily could grab a handful of pieces if I needed to. Now, what happens if, the worst case scenario happens and your place goes up in flames? So not only were we dealing with the fires this week, but I had this unconscious neighbor who just decided, you know what, I'm going to cut down this massive tree outside of your studio. It's literally hanging over my studio. It's massive. It's like 50 feet in the air. It gives off all these branches and leaves and these little things that look like broccoli every year. They just spew down all over everything. And so they were cutting it down. This was 2 days into the major fire. The Palisades and the Altadena fire had already happened. We had smoke and fires all around us. And this guy just decided, you know what? I'm going to cut down this tree right over your studio right now in the driest and least humid of conditions we've ever had and the highest winds we've ever had. He cuts this tree down, hot, like pieces of wood chips that are coming down and spewing down all over the roof of my studio and all over. And I'm just thinking, what are you doing? Luckily, I was home at the time because I work from home. I saw my studio. I saw them doing it. Luckily, I was able to get out there, sweep it off my roof, get all the stuff into a pile that I didn't want. I watered down the roof of my studio and I watered down this pile just because I didn't want anything to be able to ignite. That might sound paranoid, but if you are here in Los Angeles right now with these dry weather and you've seen these fires, you take every precaution you can. So luckily I was on top of that. So if you can be on top of stuff like that, if you see stupid things happening, if you see unconscious neighbors like my neighbor before who's had a bonfire on the street and embers were going up over all the houses, if you see something like that and you can get on top of it, in that situation, I talked to the neighbor. You might remember that episode. I talked to the neighbor and told him to stop doing it. And we finally got him to stop. But in this situation, I had to let it happen and then immediately clean up and do the best I could to get everything protected. So I was able to get it protected. That's another thing I wanted to talk about. Stay on top of these situations. Don't just handle your work in your studio, whatever. Sometimes you got to be aware of what's going on around you with other people. Not everybody is paying attention to your work. Not everybody's paying attention to your space. Not everybody's paying attention to other human beings and thinking about other human beings and, the potential consequences of their actions. So you have to, unfortunately, be on the offense and defense sometimes. And that goes for on the road and that goes for with your studio and your work. So that's another one. Now, if the worst case scenario happens, you've done all that, you've got some work set aside, you can go in a second, you got the go bag, you're taking care of things as they're happening in normal situations like I was just doing. And let's say the unexpected happens anyway, and a horrible 80, 90 mile per hour wind comes and just demolishes the neighborhood and takes your studio and you're able to get out but everything's gone. Worst case scenario. Obviously, we don't want to think about that, but if we're running a studio, if we're running a business, if you have 400 or 500 paintings like I do out there in your studio or your house, and they're worth value to you, not only emotional value but monetary value, and you're running a business, you want to be on top of that. You want to make sure that that's protected. And yes, I have insurance on my house, and yes, you can get art insurance, but that's something that is a little bit tenuous because we don't know if that's going to be covered in the worst case scenario, because a lot of these houses, they get into a situation where if enough houses get affected and burned down, a lot of the insurance policies just won't pay out. They'll just say, nope, we're not paying out. It's too much. And then they just raise all the rates for other people. And so you get screwed doubly from the situation. A lot of times in a major disaster, they won't pay out. And yeah, you've got FEMA and you've got all these other things, but they take a long time. And you don't know how much money you're going to be able to get from those. And you don't know how much time it's going to take. It could take 5 years. So you want to make sure that you are doing the best you can, and you can be getting like actual art insurance, like an art studio insurance from that. I've looked into it. I haven't specifically done that. I know I should, and I probably will now at this point, just because it's a lot of extra expenses. But if you are running a business and you want to be protected, it's something to think about. So I just wanted to go over that very quickly. If the worst case scenario happens and you lose everything, and you want to at least make sure you can kind of recoup some of your expenses and rebuild and start again, then you want to look into getting art insurance, like art studio insurance. And I'm just going to give you a couple examples of that really quickly so you know, and so you can look into it yourself if you need to. All right, so there are different types of insurance that you can get for your art, and it kind of just depends on how much money you want to put into it and how much coverage and what kind of coverage you want to get, because you might not need all of this. If you're not having a lot of people in your studio, you might not need certain amounts of this coverage. But I'm just going to go through it real quick so you can get an overview of the types of coverage and liability. It's like liability insurance you're going to be able to get for your art studio. The first one is commercial general liability insurance, and that covers if there's like an accident in your studio. Let's say you have an open studio, somebody comes in, they trip or they fall on something or they slip on some paint that you didn't clean up for some reason, which you should be doing, and they fall and they hurt themselves. Well, that covers some of your legal fees and some of your medical expenses for this person if they were to sue you. That's just an overview of what that does. I'm going to go through these fast. You can look into them in more detail on your own. But let's move on to the next one, which is commercial property insurance. Now, this is what we would be talking about specifically, like with this fire, or like, they say an act of God, water damage, fire, theft, windstorms, vandalism, all that kind of stuff. This is going to protect your materials and all the stuff that you have in the studio, your artwork, your paintings, your sculpture, whatever medium you're using, it's going to help you cover the damage of those items. Now, I don't know how much that's going to pay you out or what that's going to do specifically, because I've never had my studio burned down, knock on wood. Collective knock on wood for all of us. But if it were to happen, I don't know exactly what that would cover, but hopefully it's going to at least reimburse you somewhat for the price of the materials, maybe some of the value of the work and some of the equipment that you have in there. It'll at least help you rebuild and get going again, and maybe cover some of the expenses that you lost from maybe not being able to sell those in the future. So that one's important. Moving on, you've got crime insurance and cyber liability insurance, which just covers like scams and frauds and crimes that happen to your studio and to your work, like cyber liability insurance, things like that. I'm sure you can kind of figure that out. Then there's equipment breakdown insurance, which is if you're using heavy equipment, if you're a sculptor or you do a lot of like heavy cutting, or, you've got a factory of people in there like a Warhol, or a Koons, you got a bunch of people working in there for you, got heavy equipment, you've got really expensive equipment in there. Equipment breakdown insurance is going to help you cover some of that. If it breaks down, if it gets damaged, if it gets vandalized, it's going to help you with stuff like that. And finally, you have commercial auto insurance, which is like if you're using transportation to and from your studio, if you're handling like installations or delivering work. This kind of covers the transportation of your art and materials, and if you're get into an accident, if something's damaged in transport. So that makes sense too. They even have crazy things like installation floater insurance, which is like if your work gets damaged during installation or while it's in, like let's say you're installing it in a gallery or somebody's home, if it gets damaged while it's being installed, that installation floater insurance would cover the cost of those damages and stuff like that. So there's a lot more little things you can look into, but those are the main ones. And I just thought it was important to know what is out there, because I have always had a general idea of what art studio insurance could be like, but I really haven't gotten into the nitty gritty of just everything it can cover. And these fires have really prompted me to look into that a bit more. And I'm sure for any of you out there that's been interested in this in the past, hopefully this has covered it generally. And, if you're interested in looking into it more, you can just give it a goog, as Pete Holmes says. Give it a goog and look into it. There's a lot of stuff to find on there, and just kind of pick the policy that's right for you. I know some of them say they start at like $25 a month, but if you're going to be adding a lot of this other stuff and you have a lot of square footage in your studio, or you have really expensive work, I'm sure it's going to go up quite a bit after that. So just look into what is right for you, and just decide if it is right for you in general, if you want to do it, or if you want to roll the dice and hope everything's going to be okay. Obviously, I think in a perfect world, we all want to have our stuff protected, and we want to have that peace of mind. So even when these things are happening, it's one less thing that we have to worry about. And if the crazy unforeseeable event happens, at least you're going to have some coverage, and something is going to be reimbursed and help you rebuild and start again. But I got to say, you never know exactly what's going to happen. So always have something prepared, have a contingency plan. Maybe have some artwork stored in a buddy's house, or, in your parents' house, or have something in a truck, like I said, or in a trailer, something you can quickly get out of there. So you at least have some of your work protected in a different location, so you don't have to completely rebuild from the ground up. So we're going to leave it at that. I just want to end by saying thank you to everybody out there for your thoughts, for your concern, for your hard work. The firefighters, man, they did a crazy, amazing job. All the workers, not just the firefighters. Everybody who's been involved in coordinating this. I know there's been some mishaps. I know there's been some crazy emergency evacuation notices going to people who didn't need to evacuate, and that scared us all. But these things are going to happen. At least everybody's trying. Their heart is in the right place. They're doing what they can to protect everybody. And I've been watching the firefighters in real time with their amazing footage and camera footage. We've had helicopters over our house, watching the whole thing, and they've just really done an amazing job. And thank you to all the help from everybody in other states and other countries. It couldn't have been done without all of you. So again, my heart goes out, and condolences goes out to everybody who's lost a home or business or loved one. I can't even imagine. But let's all stay safe. Let's try to make sure nothing else happens, and we all can protect our families, our art, our livelihood, our businesses, and our homes. So that's it for today, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there. Thanks for listening, and take care of each other. All right. We'll see you next time.
Oh, thank God. I finally remembered what I've been trying to say this whole time. Oh, wait a minute. Hey, stop the music. What is this, the Golden Globes or the Oscars?
This has been the Living Artist Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I just want you to know that I appreciate you being here, and I'm grateful to be in your ears. Your art and creative life on this planet is meaningful, so thank you for sharing it with me. If you like this podcast, whatever platform you're listening to it on, please subscribe and share it with your friends. You can also leave me a positive review to show your support. This helps me to reach more people with the algorithmic magic and keep the show going strong. If you want to see more of what I do and check out the art that I create, you can visit my website at www.pmsartwork.com or follow me on social media everywhere at PMS Artwork. That's it for now. See you back here next time.